The First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution was introduced into the Bill of Rights in 1791. It states that we as human beings have the right to gather and protest. We're allowed to be in the streets, we're allowed to be on the sidewalks, and we are allowed to petition. We're not allowed to block cars. We are allowed to take pictures. We are allowed the freedom of self-expression through words and deeds. We are allowed freedom of the press, and we are allowed to speak freely. We are allowed peaceful assembly for a lawful purpose. And we are allowed the ability, the opportunity to petition our government. Freedom of speech is a human right, which is done through words and actions. We have the right to petition the government for redress of grievances. We have the right to ask the government for relief for wrongdoing. We're allowed to do this through litigation or government actions. We are allowed to join together to seek government change. Good morning. Today is Wednesday, June 3rd. It is like 6:40 in the morning. And my name is Angela Platt, and I have come up with the channel called Channel for Change. This channel was produced off the death, the murder, the modern day lynching of Mr. George Floyd. Never met him, but I do know that he was stripped of his right of human life by a police officer who is a bad representation of a police officer, who is a poor example of what police officers are supposed to do. A police officer who took it upon himself to put his knee into Mr. George's neck and allotted him roughly 6 minutes to live, and an additional 3 minutes before it was determined that the man was not breathing. And he died. He died a senseless death. And the only thing we can do now is to make sure that that death is not in vain. That death was not supposed to happen. He was not a human sacrifice. And unfortunately, I have paid attention to the news, and I know people mean well, because unfortunately, action tends to take place when something catastrophic happens. But I have heard people say that they felt that maybe this death was supposed to happen. My personal opinion that is not true. I will respectfully disagree with that. The reason why the United States and the world as a whole paid attention to Mr. George Floyd's death is because we were on lockdown. That is my personal opinion. I do not have to be correct. If this was football season, basketball season, tennis season, if life had proceeded as normal, he would have been just another statistic. Okay? I want us to be clear about that. If we were going to work, paying our bills, living our life, barbecuing on the most recent holiday, he just would have been another somebody who died at the hands of the police. Because if that was the case, I believe the little boy's name is Tamir Rice, the 11-year-old, the 12-year-old who was murdered by the police. Now that should have been an uproar. Okay? But it was just, it received attention, but not the attention that the death of Mr. George Floyd brought. Especially after it was videotaped. It was almost like being there. And the man, a full-grown man, was calling out for his mama. And she couldn't be there to respond to her son. If I am correct, he leaves behind a child. So I do not believe that his death was needed. Too many of our men have died. Too many of our black men have died. Too many of our men of color, black, brown, have died. So I find it hard to believe that Mr. George Floyd's death was needed. It comes on the backdrop of us not having money, possibly not having a job, and people operating in a fashion that is not the norm. So as I have continued to say, we are going to continue to, me, with your support, I'm going to continue to address the death of our black men and women who died entirely too soon. Mr. Jason Harrison died in Dallas, Texas. And he died at the hands of the police. He was 38 years old. Mr. Anderson Joseph was murdered by the police in Delray Beach, Florida. He was 28 years old. Mr. Juan May was murdered by the police in Duncanville, Texas. He was 45 years old. All of this, I apologize, happened in the year 2014. So in 2014, Mr. Gregory Lewis Towns Jr. in East Point, Georgia, was 24 years old when he lost his life at the hands of the police. Mr. Christopher McRae was in Fayetteville, North Carolina. He was 17 years old when he died at the hands of the police. It says that he ran Mr. McRae ran into the road on the highway around 8 p.m. and a trooper hit him with his car. So it sounds to me like that was an accident. But I'm not here to, discuss that. We're just discussing the pattern. Okay, these were human beings. These were men who will never be fathers. They will never be husbands. They will never be uncles. They will never be police officers. They will never be politicians. They won't be able to run for Senate. They won't be able to be the next black president. Their life has been snuffed out entirely too soon. Mr. Justin Sullivan was in Barnesville, Georgia. He was 25 years old, and then that was another car accident. They were crossing the highway at 1 o'clock in the morning. The officer was treated for injuries at a nearby hospital, but Mr. Justin Sullivan passed away. Michael Brown Jr., very well-known case, Ferguson, Missouri. Even after a grand jury hearing, details are unclear. He was 18 years old. Brown had either battered a police officer or was innocently walking down the street with a friend. Witnesses say he was unarmed, with his hands in the air, and the officer shot him more than 8 times. His death touched off months of protest around the United States. Now that's what I'm talking about. Here, we got to do something different. They protested. Perfect. What are we going to get out of it? What are we going to do? What are we going to talk about? What bills are we going to demand that be put in place? What legislation needs to be addressed? Jacqueline Nichols, she was 64 years old, Flint, Michigan. He ran a stop sign. The police officer ran a stop sign and collided with her vehicle, and she died. Mr. Ronald Singleton, New York, New York. He was 45 years old. Died at the hands of the police. Leo Blackman Jr., St. Louis, Missouri. He was 46 years old. Died at the hands of the police. Ernest Satterwhite, North Augusta, South Carolina. He was 68 years old when he died at the hands of the police. All of this was in year 2014. Florence White, she was 51 years old, Greensboro, North Carolina. She was crossing the street at 2 a.m. Howard Wallace Bowe Jr. He was 34 years old. Hallandale, Florida. Died at the hands of the police. Vernessa Woodward, Hapeville, Georgia. She was 26 years old. She was fatally shot multiple times by her former boyfriend, an Atlanta police officer. D'Angelo Woods, Hazel Park, Michigan. Died after a high-speed police chase. He was 17 years old. Trayon Johnson, Hallel, Florida. He was 27 years old. Now, I'm reading some of these, and some of these sound like they were accidents. But again, I don't want to get in. I don't want to voice my opinion, or we're just talking about a pattern. Caldrick Donald, Gretna, Florida. He was 24 years old. Robert Baltimore, Homer, Los Angeles. He was 34 years old. All of these people died in 2014 at the hands of the police. Cameron Tillman, he was 14 years old. In Houma, Louisiana, police received a call that armed individuals had entered an abandoned house. When they knocked on the door, Cameron Tillman, a high school freshman and talented athlete with a 3.7 GPA, opened the door and was shot 4 to 5 times. The local sheriff said Cameron came to the door with a gun in his hand, but that was later changed to say a BB gun was found in close proximity to his body. The teens say the BB gun was on the table. Okay. Cameron was alive for at least 45 minutes, according to the family's lawyer, but the police offered no medical assistance. The investigation is ongoing, but 2 months on, the 4 other boys in the house say they still haven't been interviewed. He was 14 years old. Let's keep going. Jordan Baker, Houston, Texas. He was 26 years old when he died. Halis Kinsey, Houston, Texas. He was 26 years old when he died. Eddie Ray Epperson was 45 years old, Humboldt, Tennessee, when he died. Asia Roundtree, Detroit, Michigan. She was 25 years old when she died. You know, it's really important that we vote. Yesterday, D.C. voted. I don't know if that was everybody, but I don't know if that was a national thing, but I know D.C., Maryland, Virginia voted. The primaries, is that what it's called? June 2nd. And I think it's important that I learn more about politics and the people that are running for president, and learn about the vice presidents that will be supporting our presidents. I want us to remember that prayer changes things. There is no difference between my sons, your brothers, your husbands, and Mr. George Floyd. We have to remember the postmen, the firemen, the neighbors, the repairmen, the store clerk, black men and women. We have to cover them. We have to cover. Each one of us needs to cover another person. We need to be praying for the people who are out on the front line, petitioning and protesting. We have to help our police officers to think before they respond. We have to help each other to think before we speak. How many more people have to die before we realize prayer changes things? We can initiate one law after another, and I can promise you there'll be another loophole, and there's going to be some type of hole in that law that does not benefit the minority. We're talking about human rights, racial justice. We got to remember to talk to each other. And not only do we have to remember to talk to each other, we need to listen. It's okay to talk, but you need to listen. You hear with your ears, I apologize, but you listen with your heart and your brain. And it's okay to agree to disagree. I don't have to agree with you, and you don't have to agree with me. But we do have to respect each other. And it's a shame when Mr. Policeman, who is supposed to protect human life, didn't respect human life. And it is my prayer that justice prevails. He is supposed to spend a lot of time behind prison walls. And I don't mean 4 years. We need to discuss with the couple of minutes that I have left. I want us to start talking about Joe Biden, the man, Mr. Joe Biden, the individual who is running for president, and he is a Democratic representative. And we're going to talk about what he did as vice president under President Obama. And we're going to also discuss in my next video what he did in the past, what he represented, and what his platform is now. Also, we're going to discuss President Trump and his platform and the things that he believes in, the things that he has supported, and the things that he is representing now. He's still president. And he does not have a lot of respect for these United States, but he's still president. And we have to remember that. He can do better. We can all do better. He bit off more than he could chew. He probably thought being president was easy. And he came behind some very big shoes. He came behind a man, a black man who had 2 terms with no scandals. Those are big feet to walk in, big shoes. And he had President Barack Obama has a wife who is spotless, has 2 daughters who have just done the daggone thing. And Trump knows that he has been compared to President Obama over and over and over again. So here now, Mr. Joe Biden is running for president with the support of President Barack Obama. So, let's get this done. Joe Biden was the vice president from 2009 to 2017. And in my next video, we're going to talk about his the things that he supports, the things that he has supported, and the things that he wants to get done in this next term. I am going to send out in my last minute. I am going to send out a prayer. My prayer is that you continue to pray for me, and we continue to pray for each other. And it is my prayer that each and every person who is across the world gets the job done. The petitioners and the people who are protesting, that you get home alive, safe and well, that you were not arrested or beaten, or that you don't lose your life. We need to end that. Continue to protest, but you don't need to die. We've died enough. We need to live. I want us to live a long, prosperous, and productive life. I love you. I love you with the love of the Lord. I pray that we live and not die to fulfill every purpose and plan for our lives. I pray that we are the head and we're not the tail, that we continue to be above and not beneath. I pray that all of our needs are met in accordance to his riches and glory through Christ Jesus. Jesus died for our sins and our iniquities. And through his death, we are supposed to live. And we're supposed to live together in unity. You don't have to like me. You don't have to like the color of my skin. You don't have to like my big nose. You don't have to like my big hips. But you do have to respect me as a human being. And you have to respect my black men, my black brothers, the postman, the fireman. We're the ones that built this country. We are foreparents. I love you. Please continue to watch my platform. The name of this channel is the Channel for Change. If you got anything out of this platform, please subscribe. Give me some suggestions. I'm doing this on my own. I can't do this without you. Give me some thumbs up. And if you see some area of needed improvement, put it in the in the comment box. Also with the answer. Don't just, say, look, you need to get it together. Well, tell me how to get it together. Tell me what you want to see done differently. You be blessed, and I'll talk to you real soon.